I worked for a firm in Cambridge, Massachusetts when I was in graduate school, summers. And at the end of my third year, before going into my thesis, one of the partners came to me and said, you know, Bill, we have a project in our Rome office, Rome, Italy in this case. And we could really use your skills in the presentation of that project to Nigeria. It was the new Houses of Parliament in Lagos, Nigeria. And so I went, that was in 1962. Meant we had to fly to Copenhagen and then catch a flight from Copenhagen down to Rome. And we had a day and a half in Copenhagen on our way to the assignment. And I just remember wandering around downtown Copenhagen and seeing this end of this very narrow street that opened up onto a plaza. And there were trucks, and there were people, and there were cars, and it just looked like a place that, you know, nobody really wanted to go to because it was so crowded with vehicles and such. And yet it caught our attention. That was September of '62. In January of '63, I went back through Copenhagen to make the reverse trip back to the Cambridge office and then back to my thesis. And no longer was that street filled with traffic and all of this, and I was looking to buy a suede coat for my wife, who was also about 6 feet. And I thought, great place to buy a suede coat would be Copenhagen, so we did that. And we went in there, and it turned out to be this thing called the Strøget. In November of '62, the Strøget became the first pedestrianized street in Europe. And we saw it on our way over before, and after it had been closed when we came back, and it was like magic. It was cold. It must have been 20 degrees below zero. It seemed like it was snowing, and it was just this incredible fairy tale environment. It was wonderful as a shopping environment, and for me, it was just, you know, a great thing to experience. And so, fast forward from 1962 to 68, 69, 70, when I was on the Burlington Planning Commission, it became so ultimately clear to me that that experience was the kind of experience that if we could recreate it in Church Street, it would help to provide the vitality and the attraction to make downtown a place where people not only wanted to shop, but wanted to live and be a part of it.
Church Street at the time was a car-traveled street. It was a one-way street. When I was a kid in Burlington, it was a two-way street, and the city, for whatever reasons, decided to make it a one-way street. I've always thought these one-way streets were the killer for downtowns. They speed up traffic. They don't look right. The cars are coming at them on the wrong side of the street in one lane, where they shouldn't be, and they are alarming to pedestrians. And you can only go one way, so you can't really get to what you want without going around a whole bunch of blocks. So we were faced with a one-way system in downtown Burlington. But having said that, the retail in Burlington was very strong back in the '70s, and people, of course, were parking up and down the street. And I would have to admit that there was a great deal of controversy about the idea of taking all those parking spaces, I've forgotten how many they were, 80 or 90, off the street, and paying that price for a closed pedestrian space. But we could sense the larger move to the suburbs in those days. There was a major mall project called Pyramid Mall plan for Williston, which took another 20 years to actually bring to fruition. And we thought we've got to take the time that's available to us before the challenges of big, cheap parking lots in cornfields in the suburbs, which are very difficult to compete with, frankly, for a downtown, because they're cheap. We're going to use the years that intervene to build Burlington up so it's got the backbone and strength and commercial potential to survive and grow over the future.
I'm sure other people said the same thing. It was 100% occupied on the first floor. We had a robust retail economy. The upstairs parts of many of the buildings were either vastly underutilized or vacant. So that was really where the potential was.
This wasn't about resuscitating a dead downtown. It was a very lively place, but it was very fragile. There was the threat of Pyramid Mall being built in Williston at the time. We were And I think everyone understood that that would have had a very negative effect on downtown, especially on the mix of goods that would be available. So that's true. We were working with a downtown that was still strong, but had a very uncertain future.
You look at so many downtowns, whether it's Vermont or other states, that disappear. When downtown disappears, any sense of community disappears. I walked down Church Street when Marcel and I were students and we were dating. We didn't afford a car, and we'd walk down that street. We'd walk down Burlington. To me, having grown up in Montpelier, Burlington was a big city, but you knew everybody. When I was in private practice of the law, I think I settled more cases on Church Street than I did in my office or the courtroom, because you walk up the street, you run into the other lawyers, they say, look, can't we work this out? And
well, of course, at that time, we had fabulous retail. I mean, it was the heyday of retail. Abernathy's, Megram's was one of the most spectacular specialty small department stores in the region, in the country. It was just, I had come from New York City when I first moved up here, and by far it was, I thought, as special as any of the New York department stores, because it catered to this area, but it catered to a broader customer. It was on top of trends, and it was very special. We had the Mayfair, we had, I can't even name all the wonderful stores. It had a great vibe.
You know, Church Street was always a center of commerce prior to the development of the marketplace. It was not the center of community that it is today, and over time it's evolved from being a predominantly retail sector to the community's living room, a place where people would congregate for purposes of doing business, but also to recreate, to socialize, to meet their neighbors, and increasingly a place to live and work.
There's an old saying, if you don't continue to move forward, you're going to go behind. Look at your successful restaurants. They will transform their menu, their interior, every 5 years just to keep up with not only the times, but to present something new. It was clear that in that era, even 30 years ago, you know, suburban malls were big. The beginnings of big box stores and the impact to downtowns was severe, likely to get more severe, in fact did. If you don't come up with a plan to address that and make your downtowns unique, you lose it.